So have you ever wondered, where are you going with all of this? What do you want out of your business? And more importantly, what do you want out of life? Too often than not, people build businesses that they become miserable, that they hate, that they wish that they had a boss that would fire them because they don't like what they built, but they're trapped because they are the boss. Do you want to become that person? And if not, that's why it's so important for you to have a clear vision, to have clarity, what you want out of your business, where do you want to go in life before you even go out and execute on it. So today, I have a very special guest with me that had to go through the ups and downs of building a business to truly understand what he wanted out of life, what he wanted out of business. So I hope you really learn from his story and what he's going to teach you about building a clear vision and having clarity in the direction you're going. So are you ready to level up? Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Be Your Own Boss Summit, or BYOB for short, where I'm asking expert entrepreneurs from various backgrounds about what it takes for you to become the boss of your business and not let your business become the boss of you. I'm here today with the incredible Paul Higgins, a high-performing business mentor, podcaster, and published author who helps seven-figure business owners with sales and teams so they can build, live, and give. He has 27 years of experience in sales and marketing, finishing up a 18-year gig at the Coca-Cola Company as a director. In 2011, he left to manage his health and has founded 3 businesses with a successful exit in 2019. Having a successful kidney transplant from his best mate in 2019, Paul has dedicated his second chance at life to mentoring business owners, spending time with his teenage children, and most importantly, playing golf. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time and being on the summit. Honestly,
You're
your
welcome.
story, your story it's so inspiring with so many ups and downs. I personally find it incredible that you're not only able to bounce back from a crippling kidney disease, but you're able to pursue your vision with such relentless vigor because of it. But since I don't feel like I do it justice to tell our audience about the vast amount of experience you have, can you share with them a little bit more about your background and how you got here?
Yeah, well, thanks. First, King, great to be here, and
Thank
really
you.
look forward to enjoying this session with you, and most importantly, all of you that are watching or listening to this wherever you are in the world. And look, it was a great summary, and in short, I grew up in the country, and I think you can never take the what is it? You can take the boy out of the country, but not the country out of the boy. So I'm grew up hardworking. We moved, followed my dad's career, and that was with Coca-Cola. So we moved a
Right.
lot. He got a lot of promotions. My dad had polio as a child, so I missed all
Oh,
of
wow.
his junior schooling. So let's just say that mum was a school teacher, and whenever dad was had to do a major presentation or write something back in those days, he'd be on one side of the desk, and the other side would be me, and mum would be the school teacher for both of us. But so I said I'd never follow in dad's footsteps. I'd go and find a job independently, but fresh out of getting 2 bachelor degrees, there wasn't a lot of jobs going around, and there wasn't a lot of reps they could find at the time. And lo and behold, that's when I jumped in the chair at Coca-Cola.
Wow. I think the one thing I sense, like your whole family is resilience. I think resilience is like just a key thing that like kept you going, helped your dad keep going. And I think that's just so respectable that I mean, like, despite like I think in today's day and age, we're in a generation where like the smallest thing comes up, I'm like, oh, I can't do this. And just kind of seeing your story and how you push through and not let like, your health hold you back. I mean, so many people would be like, oh, this is what happened. That's unfortunate. There's nothing I can do about it. But just having the chance to kind of hear your story even before this conversation we're having, like I was so
Yeah.
inspired, and it made me question, like, who am I to ever give up?
And look, everyone has their own personal circumstance, but everyone also has role models. And I was very fortunate that, like dad had a horrific childhood.
Wow.
He never really talks about it, but it was, yeah, quite incredible. Imagine being, 6 or 7, taken away, within, 5 hours of your home, locked in a hospital that,
Right.
you were there for 6 years of your life. So it was quite incredible. And then mum, uh, and that's where the kidney disease came into it. Mum had a massive heart attack at 44,
Wow.
and we nearly lost her 3 times whilst she was on the operating table. And that's when we found out that it was, most of our family had passed away. Mum's side of the family had passed away from kidney disease. Oh, sorry, from heart attack. Always
Right.
had heart attack on the thing, but what we since learned was that actually the kidney failure had caused the heart attack. So mum was lucky that we saved her, but she sort of spent 30 years after that with poor health, and she was an amazing role model for me to say, no matter what your health is, that doesn't mean that you can't help others, and it doesn't mean that you can't contribute. And that, therefore, for me, it just felt like they'd laid the path that was easy for me to follow.
Yeah, but yeah, I'll jump right into it. But before we jump into it, I just want to just commend you, just the courageousness. I think something you really kind of hit me when your dad doesn't talk about it, but the fact that you've gone through that and you're able to share it, I think that's so beautiful because, like, health issues is one of those things people, for some reason, just aren't the proudest of, right? A lot of them are like they don't want to share. I think I come from an Asian culture where when you're sick, you don't share. You don't even share it with family. So the fact that you're so open with it, I just want to thank you because I know a lot of people in our audience and a lot of people you've touched, you've that heard your story. You've given them that like willpower to keep pushing because it's like even for me, if Paul can do it, like who am I to not keep pushing? But yeah, no, thank you so much.
Yeah. And for like most of my, first certainly 40 years of my life, I never talked about it, right? I was
Right.
exactly what you just described. I didn't want people to think there's a reason for that, if I couldn't do a certain thing. And I pushed myself to the absolute limit in sport, in business, and in personal life. But now that I've had the gift of, an organ, which is, just such an amazing thing. Yes, it's from my best friend, but it is amazing. Part of the reason I talk about it is to get everyone to please consider donating. Just go on the donation list. Different countries have different rules, but look, if you've never thought of it, please do.
Yeah.
And it's a 5-minute form that can, like for me, hopefully it'll prolong my life by 30 years. So yeah, an amazing thing that you can do. It's in your power. And
Yeah.
if you haven't already, I'd love you to consider doing that.
Yeah, like no, for sure. And that's something that I'll be honest, I was ignorant. I didn't think about, but hearing your story, like definitely I'll be the one doing it. And I hope a lot of people in our audience think about it because you could save someone's life who could in turn use that story and change impact even more lives. So, I never think that, it's not a big thing. You as a person, like the fact that you're able to do this, you could actually impact millions of people.
So true.
So I just want to kind of jump in first about your diagnosis of the polycystic kidney disease. Before you were actually diagnosed with PKD, did you actually like what was your vision or idea of how your life was going to go? Because I'm sure it's changed a lot throughout those years.
Yeah, look, it always, the path was, yeah, good grades at school, go to university, get a job in a big corporate, right? And I was lucky. Yes, there was a bit of luck from working with dad, but I'd sort of worked with Coke, ever since I could remember. I was doing odd,
Wow.
part-time jobs, so it was sort of a bit of a destiny. So I was lucky to do that. And I learned from my dad, who's a fantastic salesperson and a sales manager and a leader. So, I thought that was going to be the path that I'd go into large corporate. And once I arrived there, I realized just what an amazing company was, what a great opportunity. And I just, lapped it up. I worked incredibly hard. I got promoted every 2 years, like anyone that performed well within the business. And it was sort of like, I don't know, 10 years went by and it was just sort of a bit of a whirlwind. Got lots of
Right.
promotions, traveled a lot. It was brilliant. But yeah, as my children got a little older and as my kidney condition got worse, it made me really think about, well, yeah, maybe it should be something different. But yeah, when I first got out of uni, it was like, just go work for a corporate and you climb the ladder.
Yeah, because I know after diagnosis, like your response was like, I'm gonna outwork this. I'm gonna work so hard. I'm gonna be such a high performer. This will never affect me. So like, I mean, what did that determination come from? Like, because a lot of people, like I think when we brought up, like there is some people that are like, well, man, if I'm sick, then I should take it easy. But you literally took the approach that most people don't, which is very admirable. So yeah, can you just kind of show it, like tell our audience, like what was that drive and how did that actually affect those years afterwards?
Yeah, well, look, I was diagnosed at 18, and it was after mum had her condition that, or her major incident, that I went and got tested. And I'll always remember the day I walked out of the doctor's, and I knew that I had it, but mum got out of the car. She turned towards me, and I could just see, I could see the look in her face. Like she was so disappointed that she'd passed on something that, that it had taken her father when she was 12 and had taken a lot of her family members. And
Right.
yeah, and I just promised myself that even for mum's sake, I was going to do everything I could to control the stuff that I could, right, and be as high performing as possible, so mum never felt a burden of saying, well, this has restricted Paul's capabilities, right? This has
Right.
restricted Paul's life. Now, what also helped is that I didn't have any real physical symptoms. My blood pressure was through the roof. They controlled that with medication, but overall, it was okay. So I just thought, that's it. I'm gonna prove to my mum that she hasn't passed on a curse for me. I can still live
Right.
an amazing life, give a great, you know, have great fun with her, etc. And I tried to lessen the burden on her was probably my key thing I was thinking, which I suppose wouldn't be 100% when I was 18 to say that, but I suppose on reflection, that's what it felt like.
Right. Yeah. I think it's so key, especially like a lot of the times when we set a vision, it's just like when you do things for yourself, you only get so far. But when you put like the people you care about and you want to make sure that they're taken care of or they're not burdened with feeling a certain way. I think it's so important because that gives you that drive because an 18-year career from like sales rep to a marketing director, that is quite a feet. You know what I mean? Being promoted every couple of years to get to the point where you're brokering billion-dollar deals with other companies. With one of my favorite brands, Coca-Cola. And I grew up like, and it's just so well known. And I think that for everybody, it's so important to have that why behind it, especially behind your vision. And yeah, and I guess like yeah, through that career, like I guess did that really affect you? Like I guess was your vision when you're at Coca-Cola to work up to marketing director, and that was like to get as high up in that company as possible?
Yeah, look, I think for me, it was never sort of I'm not one that takes titles or power or,
Right.
all the financial benefits. It was just to do the best I could. Right. And that came with promotion, but I was always pushing myself. I was pushing myself, as I said, in all aspects of my life. And, I was an avid learner. So I wanted to go and apply. And a quick example, when I first started as a rep, and everyone thought, dad's given him the job and blah, blah, blah. So, I wasn't the most popular person in the team. I was always treated a little different. And it was around mobile phones first came out in sort of the early 90s. And
Right.
yeah, I went and asked if I could get a mobile phone because I thought that was the way of the future. And they said, no, we can't afford to give to everyone. I said, okay, that's cool. So I went and bought my own. And what I did is I said to every customer, look, all you got to do is call me when your stock arrives. Okay. And what I'll do is get there as quick as I can to put it up, because obviously the quicker it's up, the more you're going to sell. So it's going to cost you 80 cents for the call back then. I can't remember. Now they're all free, of course, but it was 80 cents for the call. And then, I got there and I remember winning the first rep of the quarter, then the second, and I overheard them one night in the office saying, we can't give it to him a third time. This
Right.
is, like I don't know how he's, working the system, but he's, he's doing something dodgy, he's cheating. But it was just taking, that innovation, my learning, and putting it into practice. And fortunately, I got promoted out of that role, so I didn't get to not get it the third time in a row. But yeah, I think that was an example where I was always learning. I was always trying to apply myself, and the promotions and the success and the money sort of just came after that.
Right, because like your focus was really just becoming the best rep, like the best version of yourself within the company. And I think it's actually so key when you're setting visions because everybody's like, I want the nice like the nice penthouses, I want the accolades, I want the position. But it's one of those things. It's like you got to work on yourself to grow into the person, because I'm sure that when you got into Coca-Cola as a sales rep, you weren't the person that was ready to be a marketing director, but because you focused your vision within, trying to always one up yourself, and you were competing with yourself every single quarter, like that's where you started growing to become the person you needed to be, and that's why where you got it to become the marketing director at Coca-Cola.
Yeah, and I remember a colleague, Joe Podolak. So if you're listening, Joe,
Yeah.
um, thanks to you. But she just said, you got a skill bag, right? So it's like a doctor that goes in, or a veterinarian that goes in. They've got a particular lot of tools. For you, it's skills. So just in your career, pick up skills and experiences. Don't worry about what the job actually is, but just go after that. So I always mapped, well, for me to be really successful in life, this is all the skills and experiences that I need. And then within the Coke system, because it had so many job opportunities, so sometimes
Right.
I took a side step to go and get a specific skill, which people thought, well, that's crazy at the time, but it turned out the better in the long term. And I was a little bit like the entrepreneur within the business
Mm,
as well. So they threw some absolute curveballs to me, something that no one else could really fix. And the
right.
reason I was successful in that is because I actually collected these diverse amount of skills, rather than just trying to
Mm,
effectively, like, I wasn't great at politics, but I was great at collecting skills. And in the long run, running your own, transitioning from corporate in your own business, that becomes hugely important, because there's no more politics in your own business, but there's a
right.
lot of skills and experience that you can apply.
Yeah, especially you got to wear all the different hats in the beginning. And I think I'm in the beginning of my journey. I transitioned out of finance and really started figuring out, like, how to create something of my own, something I could bring value, instead of like brokering investment insurance with from the major banks, from the insurance investment companies. And I think that they kind of, like, what I mean, as your next wake up call was really when the doctor reached out and was like, hey, Paul, you can't keep living your life like this. At the end of the day, but like it or not, right, you still have that condition you're living with PKD. So like, how did that actually affect it? Because I know that for you, you're like, okay, I got to start looking at the other aspects of life than just being a high performer and doing so well within the Coca-Cola company. So yeah, like when you got that call and when you finally made that decision, how did that affect the vision you had with your life, and what adjustments did you have to make in that process?
Yeah, well, look, the collection of my mum and dad. So my dad was very visionary, very strategic, and he used to always, have, and let's face it, he was a dreamer, right? And I certainly get part of that. So I was always thinking about, well, what is going to be the next 10 years? So if my kidneys are failing, what does that mean? And then my
Right.
mum was very much more planned, organized, and made sure that there was a plan. So I combined both of those and really thought, well, you know what, corporate will look after me, but I don't think it's going to look after me the way that I want. Like, I would have
Right.
felt guilty to say, okay, I got to go back into hospital again. Or like, near the end, it was like I
Mm,
was in hospital more than I wasn't. It was completely all over the place. To actually perform at a senior role
right.
capacity, especially in the days when it was all face to face and you had to be on flights to go to meetings and all. I just thought it was unfair on the company. Plus, I
Right.
didn't think for my health, it wasn't advised. So that's when I started prepare to think, what can I do to basically run a business from hospital? And I really planned that when I left in 2011. And
Right.
in 2018, I basically was minutes from not getting through. I had a
Wow.
I had a really poor operation. Things went really south. And the surgeon came and saw me and he said, hey, if you hadn't prepared, you weren't fit and you hadn't prepared your life for this occasion, like, he said, you would not be here, or we would not be having this conversation. And it was like the
Wow.
first time that I sort of felt proud that, I'd taken realistically 7 years of sacrifice, of not eating the wrong foods, like keeping myself fit, like not drinking. There's all of these tough decisions I made. And on that day, it basically paid me back. So that was,
Wow.
so you talk about tenacity, but the good thing is that it did work out for me, and I'm here having this conversation.
Wow. I actually like it's interesting you brought that up. I do want to dig a little deeper because you had a vision where you're like, I have to be as healthy as possible. I have to prepare. Not knowing, not having exactly the vision of like that day in 2018, this all that work, all that abstaining from the unhealthy foods, sticking to your strict diet regimen was going to pay off. So how did you, I want our audience to understand, like, how did you actually stick to that? Because that is quite impressive, especially not knowing if there was be that one instant that everything would pay off and you can look back and like, I'm so glad I stuck to that.
Yeah, I think there's two words that sums it all up, and it happened in 1994, I think. And those two words are Stephen Covey. Okay, so I
Ah,
read a book called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and I thought, you
mm,
know what? This is going to be my Bible for how I'm going to live my life. And that's basically what I've done.
wow.
I still read every day, a daily reflection based off that. Even when I left Coke, became a facilitator for the company. As you know, the company was fantastic. Like the theory and what I did was great, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, the company itself had been purchased by a venture-backed or private equity company, and it wasn't the culture. So it was like,
Right.
yeah, but the actual content was amazing, and that really all my daily habits, how I use my time, how I got myself right, then went and helped others. Like all those principles out of that book really helped me to be in a position where
Right.
I am today.
Right. I guess that's on the health end, but let's just say the business end, because as we both know, jumping into entrepreneurship, kind of figuring out what the first businesses are, is quite terrifying. And with the uncertainty, especially with your health, because it's one of those things that you left for your health, but at the same time, the beginning years is quite stressful. And I can imagine that, what I mean, it's not like the life you expected you'd be living. But obviously, we got to get through those first few years. But I know we don't have a lot of time to kind of dig through all those years because I know a lot have happened. And I know you had a couple businesses, ended up like selling them at the end and starting Build, Live, Give. Can you kind of walk our audience through like that vision, like how it started with I think one was the outsourcing business and another one was like coaching and advisory, and how you thought that was the answer, then you had to pivot and continue to figure out what that path was for you.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is, you know, don't get too caught up on what the first thing's going to be, right? Because
Mm,
whatever the first thing is that you get into, I don't think it's going to be a last, right? Especially if you're like me, right? I pivot and change all the time. But,
right.
the fundamental thing that's never changed is me helping people, right? Mum was a school teacher. I suppose it's the same thing coming out of me. And she was an amazing community person as well. So I always want to help people. So that's sort of at the core of it. So I started as a coach and then realized that as a coach I wasn't great, so I was a much better mentor. I'd had all this experience in coaching. The key part of coaching is that all the experience lies within, all of the knowledge lies within the coachee, and you're just trying to bring it out. And I'm like, hang on,
Right.
like I've been at this game for a while. I've read, I read a book every week. I've got all of this experience, and what, I can't tell anyone that. So swapped to mentoring, and then into small businesses. Then I realized, the cake company was brilliant because it had great technology, it had great people, right? And most small businesses were struggling with those. So that's when I went into more advising. That saw the outsourcing company and the tech company come about. And then as my health declined, I went into doing something that I literally could do from a hospital bed, which was
Right.
masterminds and sort of mentoring. So yes, there was lots of pivots. There was lots of things that worked. There was lots of things that didn't. But I think, if you are watching this with the motivation to leave and be your own boss, I think the most important thing is don't worry what it is to begin with, right? It's much
Mm.
more important to make the step than it is to worry about, is it the right step?
Right. I totally agree. And I think that's something like, your end goal was to give back, to help people. And I think it's so important where like something I've even learned through this whole process is have your end goal, whatever it is. Like you want to help people, you want to provide for your family, you want to live the best version, you want to travel, whatever it is. That's different for everybody. And something I've learned is have that end goal. And I'm sure you agree with this. Let me know if I got this wrong, but like, don't get so caught up on the means of how you're going to get there, because I think your story is that testament, and you wanted to help people. You wanted to create something that can give back and build people up, like, but at the same time, you had to be open to like learning, and each step of the way prepared you for the next phase of your life and the next step into your vision.
Yeah, and look, and that's the thing. The only way that you can win, like there's a great saying that are you a spectator in sport or you're on the field, right? And the
Right.
only way you really learn it is on the field. Yes, you can read books, you can listen to podcasts like I've got, you can watch great things like this, but ultimately, it only really happens when you get on that field. And I think for me, I actually completely cut ties. So I basically went from one day a director to the next day being a coach that nobody knew. I think, there's different ways to do that. There's, you maybe do it as a side hustle and then, transfer over. So there's, lots of great ways to do it. But I think the most important thing is the networks that you build. So those relationships that you have, if you're constantly investing in relationships and you're a great person, you're a giver in life, then those people will come and pay you back. And there's a couple of key individuals for me that gave me my first break in coaching. And that was critical because, you're not going to be really able to market yourself. You're not confident doing sales. There's a lot of things that you're not great at to begin with, but leveraging those relationships, I think, is critical when you first make a step out of being, bossed versus being a boss. And the last thing I'll just quickly say on this is that,
Yeah.
you work all of your first, for me, my first 18 years was really where the company got most of the benefit. I'm not saying I
Right.
didn't. Coke was an amazing company, right? But they got most of the benefit. What you now
Mm.
want to do is flip that, right? Where you put yourself selfishly, you're putting yourself ahead of everything else. So define what that life, what that vision, what you want, and then build the business to fit that. I see so many people swap from a job in corporate to a job in their personal life. They get paid a lot less. There's a lot more risk. You know, don't,
Yeah.
don't, don't do that, right?
Yeah.
Actually think, you know what? I only want to work 40 hours a week. I want to be able to travel the world. Whatever's important to you, make
Mm.
that list and then make sure that the business and the business model fits it. And, my book, which you can probably see behind me, Build, Live, Give, is exactly how I went from a corporate employee to running my own businesses, and the 5 steps that I think are critical in hindsight, right? I didn't apply them in that logical order the way when I left, but I think those things are important. But the most important thing is set up what you want, but also what your partner wants and the most important people in your life want, and then go and build a business to suit that.
Yeah, I think it's super important, and that's why just having you share about like your vision has really helped me, because like I'll be the first to admit the last 4 years trying to build up a practice in finance, I was kind of thrust in that position. I learned a lot, having to like tread water, like being thrown literally into the pool, but at the same time I didn't have that vision, so I ended up building something that didn't made me miserable, and I'm like, nobody can fire me. I'm technically my own boss. I have all these clients I'm responsible for, so it's so important, and having you share that. And I think another point you're sharing with like just like I think everybody I've talked to, like had the chance to have a conversation with for the summit, are givers, and I think that's what I really love about this whole entrepreneur community. That everybody understands how hard it is to get started, and especially in the beginning, and like my cup has been filled so much from you, from so many people, that it's just like I'm already like looking like who can I continue to help. And I think it's so important because like there's really two sides of business, where one person, like one side, it's like what can I get, and at the end of the day, it's just like you might see short-term success with that, but how do you build longevity? Because at the end of the day, business is about relationships. We're social creatures. You know what I mean? And I think that the communities I've been in and the people I've that have given first before I've even had the ability to give back, that I'm forever grateful. And I just really want the audience to understand it. As much as you have a vision, you cannot do it alone. Like you just can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. And I think look, corporate is still a wonderful opportunity, right? So if you're happy being in corporate, you might want to change jobs, careers, that's fine. But I think corporate still is not always the givers are the ones that are most successful, right? I think,
Right.
those that are the individuals that really seek the career progress, maybe at the expense of others. It's not always that case, right? But sometimes it is. Right. So in a way, it's like if you've got one managing director and you've got, 5 people or 6 reports, one of you are going to get that MD job when it comes up. It's very competitive, right? So people don't
Right.
give. And I felt I was a little bit like a round peg in a square hole within that environment. Certainly the culture that we had. I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
culture of all, but it was, it was very political and very difficult. Whereas once you get out into the small business world, it's amazing. One of the things I love, and everyone that I speak to, is how collaborative it is, right? People
Right.
just want you to work, because the chances of you, like even you and I, King, ever going for the same client is very unlikely, but we can
Yes.
still share our experiences of how we run our business, how we do sales. We can learn techniques and tactics, and strategies and tactics that can apply to who we go after, but it's very
Mhm.
rare. So it's a lot more collaborative. It's less competitive. And I think that's a massive benefit of being an entrepreneur in today's world.
Yeah, because it's so much about entrepreneurship. It's your story. Who can you speak to? Because at the end of the day, if we're doing the same thing, we're coaching even the same niche of people. You who you can speak to and who I can speak to are so vastly different. And that's what I've really experienced. That everybody understands, your unique story, your path to your success will speak to a different person. And that's why, like, the more of us are there collaborating, the more impact we can make collectively as a group. And that's so amazing.
Yeah. And look, I've got a section in my sales CRM which says value added, right? So at the end of every call, I look at, okay, how can I add value to this person? And, I've been very fortunate that I got onto LinkedIn early, and I've, built an enormous following and success there. But, I've got 400 vetted experts around the world. So when someone says to me, hey, I need this, right? Or they say, this is my challenge, I instantly just go to, it's like my uh, black book, where I go, okay, I know 3 names that do that. And I think that's the power. Now, I learned that from Coke. I think intuitively I was always that person, following from my mum. But
Right.
I think that's incredibly powerful. And just on that, the greatest risk, or the biggest mistake I made when I left corporate, was thinking that everyone was an expert like we used to hire at Coke. I thought, okay,
Right.
they're the best in the world. They won't let me down. Everything's going to be great. So I took that philosophy into running my own business, and I got fleeced, right? And this is a guy that had done due diligence, like you said, for billion-dollar companies, right? So I thought I was pretty good at picking this,
Mhm.
but I was an absolute failure. So go to someone, join a community that there's the peers that can recommend people to you, because you definitely don't have to do it alone, right? There's lots of people that can help you, but just make sure you're picking the right one, because it can really set you back in what's a hard gig in life, regardless, which is being your own boss.
Yeah, I think it's the whole concept, the who, not the how. The more people you know, the easier it gets. And another quote was like, yeah, your network is your net worth. So make sure that you make the best connections and be genuine and authentic. Be yourself, right? And I think that's the key. But just to wrap off this like first half of our conversation, the one question we've been asking all of our speakers, because we really want to help early stage entrepreneurs reframe how they see failure. I know both you and I see that failures is not actually a bad thing. The faster you fail, the faster you succeed. The more you fail, the more you learn. So I guess, what was like over like your decorated journey, from your diagnosis to where you are today and overcoming so many challenges. What was your most memorable failure? More importantly, what lesson did you learn, and how did that lesson you learned actually play a role in your success today?
Yeah, well, look, the perfect example is our tech company, right? So we fell in love with a product. It was called Podio, and
Mm,
Podio was a project management system. So if any of you have used like a Basecamp or
mm,
something, or Teamwork, etc., it was like that, right? And it was brilliant because it was so flexible; it could do anything.
Right.
And I personally fell in love with it. It was like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. But I'm a combination of a right brain and a left brain person, right? So I'm visionary, but I also like to be planned and organized. Anyway, long story short, I met Scott Galloway, my business partner. And what we did was went and built a big team in the Philippines to support development of this. Was so excited. And then two things happened. One is that we put the cart before the horse. We were so in love with the product, we then went out and tried to fit it to clients, right? So there wasn't an audience, there wasn't really a need. So number one. The second thing is we picked the wrong partner. It was unlucky, but it was bought by one of the biggest tech companies in the world, Citrix, and they completely changed the strategy.
Right.
So what went from a small business tool helping clients that we knew well, it then changed, right? So for those two reasons, in 2016, I went to a conference, was taking my family around Europe for 8 weeks, preparing for, my health changes. I just said to Scott, that's it. We've got to jump. We've got to get off this Podio drug. And he's like, what? We've got, 40 or 30 odd people in the Philippines. We're in debt of all this money for setting it up, and you want us just to walk away? I said, yes. Like, the old fallacy of sunk cost.
Yes.
Right. Yes, we'd spent the money, but, pouring good money into bad wasn't going to make it any worse. Right. So my biggest lesson is always build your audience, find out what they want, and then find the solution, right? Everyone says it, but believe me, that was a massive thing. Now, on the flip side, we then jumped into more of an agnostic program. We had a couple of platforms, but we took all our learnings from that and said, okay, we're going to do basically the George Costanza. You ever watch that episode where he does everything opposite in his life?
Yes, actually.
And yeah. Amazing episode, right?
Yes.
So we did that, right? So this is all the stuff we did. So what are we going to do different? We're going to build our own audience. We're going to pick partners where we're not completely reliant upon it. We're going to build a sales system, blah, blah, blah. So all of these critical things that we didn't have, we did. And then in 2019, we had a successful exit.
That's amazing.
So I went from one of the worst business experiences of my life to being one of the best, which was, to sell your business is always a great thing.
Of course. And I think that, I just want the audience to know that, you had to go through the tech company and learn how not to do it. Then you did the exact opposite. And I think that even in my journey, maybe the sunk cost wasn't as great or a big of a lesson, but even like before I started the summit, this whole summit was for me to understand the audience I'm speaking about, and having a chance to interact with them before I even create anything that I think they need, right? Because before this, I tried e-com for a bit. That was my first experience, like with this whole online space. I was like, oh, it's a good way to kind of test the waters with this whole internet business type of model. And I thought that I came up with a product, or I found a product that I thought people needed, and it flopped. And I wasted, thank God, only 3 months into it. I didn't have as much leeway or the time or the funding to keep going for it. But like, in a, I guess, a more miniature version of your experience. Like, I totally understand it. And that's why with the summit and with the direction I'm going today, like, I'm making sure that I know exactly who I'm speaking to, what they're looking for, not even just what they want, right? It's more like what they need, but, but communicate it in a way that speaks to what they want.
Yes.
So making sure all my bases are covered, but just kind of hearing it from you, like, it gives me like just so much hope that I'm doing the right thing. Because like you said, when you go in the day in and day out, you see the long-term vision, but then it seems like you're waking up to this new reality. And like, there are going to be days where you're going to have those self-doubts, and you're like, am I going the right direction? It seems I'm kind of crazy. My friends are thinking I'm crazy. My parents think I'm kind of crazy. But no, thank you for sharing that. And I think that's super valuable for our audience.
Yeah. And look, the simple analogy I always use, which isn't great for me, but I do choose to shave my hair. For everyone looking at me thinking, God, he's a bald guy talking about hair. I actually prefer not to have hair because it's grey. Let's face it, it's grey, right? It's not, thick and strong like your hair, King. So what I always say to people, what is your clients or your customers or your target market's hair on fire problem, right? What's a problem that they must put out, right? No one wants their
Right.
hair burn off, right? So,
Right.
find that. And once you find that, which I know you're seeking at the moment, King, once you find that, then everything else follows, right? You can get all the experts in the world to help you with the rest of it. But the number one nugget, it's like the hedgehog, the thing that you must be great at if you're going to run your own business is finding that hair on fire problem.
Yeah, and I think that as the summit gets closer and closer, it's been more on my mind, and I think that's something that I think I want the audience to understand too. Is like you don't need to have the complete vision. Every step I take, every one of these conversations, I gain more insight on what I want to do next. Is hearing these stories and having insights from the experience people like Paul and all these other successful entrepreneurs have had has given me more and more clarity slowly. And I think the goal is really, yeah, like I think even earlier, as we said, don't focus too much on the means. You know what I mean? Figure out what the end goal, who you want to help, like what type of change you want to bring into the world, and be open. Because I feel like the more we try to control the narrative, the less we're open to the opportunities that are actually out in front of us because we're so, I guess, narrow sighted in the direction we're going.
Yeah, and I think my overall direction was always to work remote because of my health, right? So that
Right.
was a key driver to support my family. But if you look at it now with COVID, it's fast tracked that. So in 2011, all my friends thought I was crazy working in my track pants at home, and my mum and dad thought, what's he done? He's thrown away a perfect career, and he's like absolutely crazy. Whereas now, and everyone said it's so risky what you're doing, and I thought, you know what? No, I knew that the Coke company, in particular in Australia, because of sugar as public enemy number one, it was going to
Mm,
decline, right? So actually
mm,
being in that company, I thought was a greater risk than taking control of mine because I had one
right.
option. Like if something happened, if boss walked into me tomorrow, right, and said, "That's it, Paul. Sorry, we've had to make everyone redundant. You're gone." I had no option. Whereas now, one
Mm,
client walks into my office, right? That's fine. I've got hundreds of clients, so I'm not as risk at what it was. And I think for you, it's a brilliant time to make the leap, right? Because everyone now is working like this on Zoom, right?
mm,
There's even a
yeah.
new thing coming out where people have got Zoom phobias, and they're, like I'm sure there's going to be a whole, you could even, if you're got some medical background, you could go into diagnosing people with Zoom phobias, but because we're using it so much. But I think it's key to take this opportunity because the world has changed. We will not go back to face as much as we were, and you can generally help it. Most of my clients from the US, Canada, right, and that really wasn't possible even 7 years ago, 5 years ago. That
Right.
wasn't a common thing. Whereas now, piece of cake.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing before I wrap up this half is, yeah, like I because of the internet, because of this shit, because how this has normalized. I mean, like an in-person event, if I was in Vancouver, Canada, I would either have to have all the money to pay you guys for your time and fly you guys in and pay for your accommodations. Now, because of what technology, I mean, the internet has allowed us to do, is for me to put together a global event. You know what I mean? Without all those other costs. And it's a great way to start. And I want to encourage people who are on the edge, right? Who just started to embrace this. You know what I mean? And it's such a powerful tool, but we just gotta frame it the right way and use it the right way and leverage it the right way, more importantly, to our advantage. But Paul, I just really want to thank you for taking the time for not only sharing your expertise, but honestly, the decades worth of experience and wisdom you have and from the amount of times that you had to deal with setbacks and that put you in risk for not being able to follow through your vision, but you're able to continue to pivot and redefine what that vision is. And I think that that's so important for our audience to understand that, like have that end goal and have that vision, but be open to how you're going to actualize it and live out that vision. And for everybody who's watching, if you found value in what Paul had to share today, make sure you check out his free on-demand masterclass to help you get 1 to 3 new clients a month on LinkedIn, as well as his free business assessment report. Click the button below the video. Make sure you check it out. Paul is amazing on LinkedIn, and Paul has such an amazing program to help you. So I definitely want you to take advantage of it. Paul, what's the best platform for our audience to follow you on?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is my preferred platform. I post there 3 times a week. I try to give as much value as I possibly can. So LinkedIn, if you go to blgprofile.com, that'll take you straight to it. And on LinkedIn, it's Paul Higgins Mentoring.
Perfect. And I'll make sure to include the links to all your social platforms and your site below, so we can make sure that our audience doesn't get lost trying to plug in the right right URL and the web address. So awesome, everybody who's watching. If you haven't had the chance to get your all access pass, be sure to get it before the summit ends. Paul will be going on a deep dive on how you can set a clear vision on how to set the appropriate goals in order for you to achieve them. And also, if you decide to upgrade your ticket today, you will also get access to Paul's generous bonus, a $700 off coupon on his sales machine community. And if that's something that you'd be interested in, make sure you don't miss out on this offer. Paul, thanks so much for being on the summit. It's been an absolute honor to get to know more about your story and just learn from your experience, and really downloading decades worth of experience and information into like a 30-minute interview with you.
My pleasure, King.
All right. Thank you.